A word to the wise. We are an explicit podcast tackling content with adult themes as well as entering spoiler territory if you aren't caught up with us. That point would be the end of the fourth book in the Red Rising series. Iron Gold by Pierce Brown.
Hey there, this is Cross.
And I'm PJ.
And we are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking. You should think of us as your intoxicating weekly book club.
Crossland, we're fucking done. We're done with this book. We finished another one. Holy shit, goddamn. Now I still have to wait until I start the next book. But I'm excited in the moment.
You know, this is probably the most books you've read in a year in a long time. And we've finished, what, 3 books?
This is the most books other than books assigned to me for school, this is the most books I've ever finished in a year.
Which is, you know, it's a great thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was the point. That's the entire fucking point of this thing. I'm really happy about it.
It's interesting. I'm excited that we're here. I'm glad that, you know, we've gotten you on this train. I'm very excited for kind of the next looks of things that we're going to talk about and start doing. It's all very exciting. And of course, I'm very excited to talk about the end of fucking Iron Gold. Today is our 10th and final episode covering that glorious book, Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. And we're going to tackle chapters 58 through that end. But before we do that, let's talk about what we're drinking.
I've got rye in a cup.
Just rye.
Yeah. I've got a little pour of Woodford Reserve straight rye that I'm really enjoying. So I decided to just have some rye neat for the show.
Wow. It's a choice. Woodford Reserve is good. I'm not digging on you. It's just whoop. Fair.
And then following that up, I've got Straight Fire from Blackstack, which it's a double IPA, but I love the can art. I also hate the can art. I love how much I hate the can art, basically. And I think it was done on purpose. It was a brew in conjunction with a burger place that they're friends with. And it's just it's just a shitty picture of, like, a top-down picture of a burger in a takeout box.
I just looked it up. This is the funniest shit I've ever seen on a beer can. Oh my god! And
the bottom of the can. So there's always a description of the beer on all their cans. So they describe how what's going on, blah 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 blah. Then we hired a bunch of Instagram models and influencers to accurately illustrate how lit the experience is certain to be. Trust us, it's fire. And that's the picture they put on the can.
It's fucking hilarious. That's honestly amazing. That hurts me a little bit with how funny that is. Highly recommend you look it up just so you can know what it is. Fire is spelled F-Y-R-E, because it's the Firefest photo.
Is that what it is?
It looks close to it. It looks close to it. It's got like the loose cheese on it, right? Like,
I can't tell.
Or does it look like a burger?
It
seems to be evoking that Firefest imagery, though.
Yeah, that could be. It's just a top-down picture of some sort of sandwich on a burger bun. I don't know. I'm not going to read too far into it. I think it's funny. But yeah. What have you got?
I am having literally what I had last week, the smoked honey sour. I was going to make the blueberry sour that we had on our Patreon thing for the Bo Burnham Inside special that we did this week. But I didn't have enough time because I was running a little bit behind, and the whole egg white combo shake thing would have taken a little bit longer. So I decided to go with the easy one. Mostly, I already have the stuff. So another smoked honey sour. Yeah, really solid. And I'm following that up with also the same thing that I drank last week. So exciting. The high-pitched Mosaic IPA, which is just great. But I have not had a whole lot of time with everything that's going on and everything we're planning and trying to do. So
I need to get to the liquor store to pick up some beers that aren't IPAs or stouts. Like, that's all I have in my fridge right now. and I don't want to open any of the stouts because they're like large format bottles.
Oh no.
That'd be a tough follow-up to a cocktail on the show.
True. Although you could just do one of those.
I could just do one of those. That might be what I do next week. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, there we go. There we go. So last week's predictions, we've got a couple here to talk about. We're actually going to talk about all of them, even though a couple aren't fully answered here. I'm actually, for the first time ever, going to carry your predictions over to the next book as well. Okay. The one or the two that aren't answered here. So we're going to carry these forward as well. So it'll be interesting and different. So with that, your first prediction was, does Apple live through the upcoming task? You said,
unfortunately, yes. Equipped with something, army, ships. Was that you? Did you write that?
Nope. No, you did. Or maybe I did. I might have typed it up for you because you were talking and answering the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, yes, and that came true. And he does have a ship. He doesn't have an army, though.
No, right. That's kind of one of the things that Darrow deprives him of out of their agreement, basically. So
he almost didn't live.
Almost didn't, yeah.
If he and Severo would have gotten into an actual like fist fight, I don't think Apollonius would have survived.
That's fair. I think Darrow probably would have just skewered him. Okay, so with that, in Darrow's attack on the Ash Lord's base, who actually survives? You said
Darrow, Apollonius, Thraxa.
So more than that survives.
But they did survive. Yeah, you're right.
You said they were the only ones who survived.
No, so it's just me that drinks for this one, I think. Like that.
Yeah, I think so. I put both, but I was like, no,
this is me.
So.
Oh, what do you know? Darrow survived.
Hey, now.
All right.
Life's not guareed.
No, I was actually like kind of flip-flopping back and forth between whether or not I thought he'd survive the book.
Does Lysander get out with his life?
Yes, but not as an innocent bystander. He will need to fight. And he doesn't have to fight his way out, but he does commit to raising an army and fighting.
Yeah, so this is one where I agreed basically to take the drink here because I think it makes the most sense. And
we can do a both drink. Because I think the spirit of my answer was that he would need to fight his way out.
So the next question of which is going to be rolled forward is, who is the Syndicate Queen? We don't get an answer to that, although we do see a looming face. You said Dido. We don't know that yet, so that's a lingering question.
That face does it. I got the impression that face wasn't necessarily the actual like look of the person that is the queen, much like the Ares helm.
Yes, yeah, I was thinking kind of like a visage. Like it's not really... You could also imagine it or picture it just like the Emperor in the early Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
You know, the sort of cloaked figure where you can't really make it out, but you know that it's someone important, but you're not sure who or what.
Right.
And then the final question here is, what happens to Lyria? And you said...
We see an epilogue for her, not a POV in the next book.
So because we haven't started the next book yet, we can't really... call that one out,
right?
But
technically we don't get to know this until the end of the next book, until we start the last chapter of the next book.
Wait, what? Oh, what? Why? Well, you're saying this could technically go completely unanswered. And we won't know until the end of Dark Age, technically. That's interesting. This question would just roll forward forever. Oh man. That's a kind of a nightmare, and I'm afraid now. So, with that, let's get into the chapters.
I hope I'm right. I hope she's not a POV in the next book, and I have to constantly bring up whether or not she's going to be a point of view in the next section of the book for the entire book.
Wouldn't that be something?
End of the book, surprise Lyria chapter.
Yeah, I can't.
You can't answer that.
Which is what I was like, nope. Okay, cool. So with that, we're going to get into the chapters. We've got chapter 58, Ephraim, Half-Breed, and Hatchet Face. So, it should go without saying that this section is actually the smallest section in this entire book that we're reading today, a little bit over 40 pages. So it's not a whole lot in the way of physical reading, and some of these chapters are real short because we go to all 4 POVs and kind of get a sense of where they're going to be or setting them up for the next next installment in this ongoing story. So with that, there are obviously things that we're going to talk about and things that we'll have to break down, but it's also worth noting that it's mostly setup, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right.
With a couple of components of big payoff. But so with Ephraim here, remember how you described Elektra as feral at the beginning of this book?
Mm-hmm.
I know your response is going to be, Crossland, I don't remember what I said last week, let alone 8 weeks ago or whatever. But
I think of her as like, did you ever watch Dave the Barbarian?
Yes.
Chimp. Or what's her name? What's her name? Fuck. What is like the feral, like caveman looking girl? She's described as a chimp all the time.
Fang? Isn't it Fang?
Fang. Yes. Yep. I think of her as Fang.
That's perfect. That actually feels very right. And that's kind of scary.
I mean, that is when I think of her, like when I try to imagine her, I imagine Fang as a cartoon. I don't think of any other characters as cartoons, but she is a cartoon in my eyes.
Except for Elektra. Yeah. What do you make of how the kids interact now that we kind of get to see them be people a little bit more?
They're obviously, or do you mean interacting with Ephraim, or do you mean interacting in general, like with the world?
In general and with Ephraim. I mean, I think that both play here. So
I mean, with Ephraim, they're clearly wary, but they're competent and they understand how to fight and they have a confidence about them. Just in general, they're confident and competent, but Pax is, and Ephraim points this out, Pax is the more cautious, but I think Elektra is the better fighter that we've seen a couple times throughout the book, that she's the better fighter, so she's a little bit more willing to be the leader. And I think she's a little protective of Pax. She's older, isn't she? By like a year? I don't know if that's actually revealed at all.
No, I don't think she is older. I think she's younger.
Really?
By a year. Because Pax was born before...
Yes,
Darrow didn't know about Pax.
Yep.
So I think Pax is a year older and she's younger. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, that makes it... That flips it on its head for me. And I don't know, she's just kind of more headstrong, I guess. A little bit more stubborn and wanting to prove herself. So she takes the lead. I think they both understand how dangerous Ephraim can be because of how they got kidnapped and just the depth of what they got themselves into through Ephraim. But the fact that he's holding the Duke hostage gives them some ease in knowing that he's there to help them.
Yeah. Right.
I don't think they'll necessarily fully trust him at any point, and that's clear through their actions and putting him at blade point for most of the story going forward. But at least they know that his intention is to bring them back to their parents, bring them back home.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they understand the proper intentions, and it kind of creates an interesting tension between the kids and Ephraim because they obviously know him from abducting them and that whole thing. So they're like, ultimately, the situation is very weird.
Hey, you remember when you tried to kill everybody that I love and then steal me and give me to crime syndicate? Yeah, hi.
Yeah. So why are you rescuing me from the crime syndicate? Now I'm real confused as to your intentions. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the whole situation with the kids, I think, is actually really funny, and it lets Ephraim actually be a source of humor inside of this little chapter, where there's just a lot of like different like little jokes that get to go off, and he plays off of the two of them and they play off of him fairly well. It's pretty funny.
Right. Yeah, it's great.
The fact that Ephraim, after freeing the children, though, of course, pilfers the room and like runs around is just kind of like having fun. He's like, oh, I gotta stuff all this shit in my bag. But
and he's like upset with how little he can actually take compared to what's in there.
Right. He's very upset about the limited amount that he can take out of this room because there's so much cool shit in here. And, you know, obviously the kids are grabbing like legendary razors, and that's what they're carrying around. And it's just a very interesting scene. It feels very like Indiana Jonesy to me in a way.
You referring to it as legendary razors like makes me get like Diablo nostalgia. Like, I just want to see a brown pillar coming up off of it.
Insert sound effect here. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. The gold, the legendary drop sound.
Yep.
It's very, very similar. Not only that, but like, you wonder if maybe one of them grabbed like Selenius's razor that was stolen from the beginning of the book.
Plus 25 crit hit chance. Something like that.
Yeah, of course. Legendary effect where it summons a demon every third swing. But then he finds the persistence of memory, la persistencia de memoria.
Yeah, if you weren't gonna say that, is that French or Italian?
Spanish.
It's Spanish. Okay.
Yeah, he's Spanish. Salvador Dali. Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep.
That makes total sense. I was going to make you say that if you hadn't said it, but you did, so never mind. Carry on.
Oh yeah, no worries. You're gonna force me to try to say it weird. It is actually funny because Dali did live in France for a long time, so it is interesting that like you called out France first, because it's definitely
it's the mustache.
That's it's fair. It's the weird mustache is a telling French move. So. It is funny that he just kind of grabs it though, and then he's like, "This is I have the persistence of memory, like it's just mine," and he steals it. You gotta hope that like he makes it out of there with it.
Yeah, I mean it's clearly an important painting to him. He obviously he mentions he investigated that claim, but earlier in the book he has a copy of it in his apartment, and it's a cool painting.
And he really values art. He talks about art in the early part of this book all the time.
Yeah,
and there's clearly something there, and it's not that far of a stretch to say that he kind of is an embodiment of the persistence of memory, of the sort of droopy clocks of life, and the diluted serotonin from the Zolidone, and just everything else. Like, just the dude fits that bill fairly well.
Yeah, he does.
I love how Hatchet Face is just able to count all of the guns and people and recounts the models to Ephraim. And we already mentioned the humor being great, but like the line specifically, "No dolls for you, huh?" Like after she does that is just perfect.
I mean, she's upfront about the fact that she missed a couple. Like,
it's true.
It's not that impressive. But no, like clearly she is well trained in this stuff. Like she knows what to do here.
Which is like perfect as the child of Victra and Severo, right? Like it just fits the bill.
Yeah. Like she's a tactician. She is a commander through and through. She will be.
You think?
Yeah. No? What do you think? What?
I feel like she's more aggressive than she's more of a foot sold
That's more what I mean. Like she'll the leader of a platoon.
Got it.
Like on the ground.
Okay. I thought you were thinking
bigger
picture, Roke maybe.
Not an Imperator. Like I'm thinking more. I guess tactician gave it the wrong impression. I mean, like she is fast.
That makes sense to me. Yeah, they're just, again, all the humor is great. All the funny shit is awesome. Poking the Duke, making the Duke tell him to stop, and getting out through all the dudes is great. All of them kind of listening and behaving. And then they make it all the way out, and
I'm thinking of his conversation with the Duke, telling him to go look out there. He's like, "Fuck you, shit."
It's funny. He's gonna push him out in front. I think we said this a little bit last week, but it reminds me of like a Coen Brothers film in a way. Just it's sort of the way that humor plays back and forth. Like. It's very Fargo. It's very
I was gonna say,
where art thou?
I was gonna say Fargo. Like where were we at?
We were at Gorgo, which he's obviously we made jokes and comments about the irreverence of kind of the commentary that is there between the Duke and the kids and Ephraim. We then he's constantly observing. He's like, I still don't see Gorgo. I still don't know where Gorgo is. And finally, he catches the glint of Gorgo up in another room, sniping, shoots Ephraim, and almost kills our boy, and potentially is still gonna kill him. Like, he's not in a good way at the end of this, but it basically ends with a close call and them getting on the ship and taking off.
There is the comment, now I understand what it means, now I understand the look in Gorgo's eyes when I called him the Duke's man or something like that. He's saying they're fucking, right?
I think so.
And probably, like, they're together is more what I'm thinking. They don't really expand on that. And it wasn't a detailed enough description of what he was seeing to really know what he means. But I'm assuming that's what he meant.
I would think so, but also that he consists, like, he might also always be the one who's like a step ahead too, in the same way that the Duke is. Like, he's a very smart Obsidian. He's an incredibly intelligent Obsidian.
Yeah, but that phrase is strange.
Yep.
If it's anything else other than referring to them being together, it's a strange phrase, but it's not well defined enough to make that call, I feel like.
In this moment, I suddenly realized why Gorgo smiled when I called him the Duke's man.
That's all it says.
That's a tough one. I think you're probably right.
Like that seems to be the best answer, but I don't know if I'm missing something. I don't know if there's an obvious like explanation that I just completely ignored, but that was my vague understanding. It's probably that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Gorgo is kind of like, I mean, the way that I also think about it in addition is maybe that Gorgo is like the Duke's insurance policy in a lot of ways. He will stop at no end to ensure that everything goes well, you know? Because the fact that he's even set up like a sniper.
Even that doesn't make sense for that comment, though.
No, I'm not saying it's full, but I think that there's something there.
There is.
I don't think that that's like the foolproof or bulletproof rationale. So it's a tough question to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well that's Ephraim. Anything else on this whole section?
Nope. I don't think so. Is there? Let's see.
The only other thing that I was going to say that I found really great is there's a number of quick pieces of imagery that Pierce uses to kind of move through the scene as they're escaping very intelligently. Like they're like running through a dinner at one point, and like Elektra grabs like an octopus tentacle and eats it. Like there's just some like great shots that you can imagine easily.
I'm just imagining Fang like running through and grabbing just a handful of like squid. Like I'm just imagining a bunch of squid on a plate.
Yeah, that's the only other thing that I can think of that I just thought of. But
God, I haven't seen Dave the Barbarian in such a long time. Do you think it's streaming anywhere?
That's a good question.
Do you think it holds up?
I doubt it. I somehow doubt that calling a child a monkey holds up that well to adult humor. With that, we move into chapter 59, Lyria, Forgiveness. I love this chapter title. It's obviously been the theme of Lyria's character as we've like plowed through this entire book, her kind of like need to plow through life and trying to fight to survive. But I think that this turn towards forgiveness and still understanding like Ephraim's internal sadness is a good one. Coming to terms with Virginia a little bit later, that entire process on display here is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I think she surprises herself. Like obviously, she surprises herself with the relief that she has when she learns that Ephraim is alive. But I think it has a lot to do with the pain that she's had to deal with and understanding the pain that Ephraim has dealt with in the past and knowing what pain can drive someone to do. I think it's just kind of a connection on a personal level of how similar they are for very different reasons, not faulting him for acting in such a way as a result of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I think that makes a ton of sense. I think that clicks fully with her character.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to like build off of there.
I'm a very astute reader, Crossland.
Every once in a while, you know? something broken clock, something. Holiday's reflection on Ephraim's pain is really intense, I think, giving him even more backstory and consequence and really kind of filling out the reason that he's so pissed off and sad all the time at losing his troops. And I think that all of that really clicks. And to get it right at the end here from this perspective and understand that Holiday, like even in the earlier scenes, puts up with him partially because she knows everything that he's been through and understands the pain. And, you know, it's tough. And then the quote, of course, that kind of accompanies this is, point is, if Ephraim wants to die, but he can't, that's his curse.
Mm-hmm. I think what makes the most sense about all of this for me is his assertion that he and Volga aren't friends through the entire book. And it's not that he's convincing her that they're not friends. It's convincing him. He's convincing himself that they're not friends. So he can try to isolate himself from that feeling and from that pain and fear.
Yeah, well, right. And so that's a big part of the Zoladone. And I think you bringing up Volga and invoking Volga here is really, really smart for him. And he's constantly trying to talk himself out of being a good person, even though he very clearly can be when he chooses to be. I mean, and he's able to keep like her interests in mind, Volga's interests in mind, while, going through this entire mission. That's why he doesn't give up the kids right away. And he just wants to ensure Volga's safety, Volga's pardon. So
I think that's also why I think he made a crucial mistake with Lyria in that he actually spent time talking to her and building a rapport, which was kind of necessary for the task at hand, but it complicated things, and he got sort of a friendship feeling and understanding, a familiarity with her that made it just pushed it over the edge into friendship, so he couldn't kill her.
Mm-hmm. It's very true. I wonder if there's any part of that story that could have gone a little bit differently, or if he just decided that friendship was the best angle to ensure that she would wear it all the time.
Well, it was clearly the one thing that she was lacking. It was the one weakness that she really, really, really wanted to fill. Like, it's a void that she wanted to fill, and that he could. So it was the easiest approach to getting in her good graces and like manipulating her to the point that he needed. So, but it was ultimately his downfall. Truly.
Yeah, I mean, truly, it was his own hubris. That's really good point, I think. Yeah. I think Lyria's reaction as well to Virginia's plea for forgiveness is fantastic. Virginia getting down on her knees and, kind of kneeling before her asking for forgiveness is a really interesting, kind of shocking moment, especially from Lyria's perspective. It's necessary for a character to see, hear, and understand that even, these people, in quotes, are still just people, just like her, doing their best and going about life as best they can, even if they're, large and in charge. We of course understand this about Virginia, and we know the world through her eyes. I mean, not directly through her eyes, but we understand. It's a tough spot to be in, but it's good that Lyria is kind of finally opening up and seeing this and getting to have that perspective. The quote here that I like is, letting go of that anger doesn't spit on the memories of Ava or Tyrion or the children. It honors them. And for the first time I can remember, I feel hope. So in context, love it. Makes sense. Totally nice, mature conclusion to come to. But that, like, when I first read your notes on this and it had that quote in there, I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that as a general like idea. Sometimes anger, it can be motivated towards something non-destructive, but it just kind of dropping it doesn't necessarily honor those that died as a result of what made you angry. But in context, this makes sense, Yeah, I totally agree with you on that front. I don't think that this is something that universally applies or feels like it's universally applicable. It feels very direct and immediate to Lyria and her situation and what she's kind of presented with. Mm-hmm. There's obviously a little bit of shock and awe, of course, that this is the sovereign that's kneeling and willing to do anything for her, including the bit with Liam and like making sure that he's in a good school and like, I'll visit him, I'll bring him cake, and like that whole thing is very sweet and touching. Oh, that was Holiday afterwards. Was it? Yeah. It was as Holiday was walking her out. She was asking to go see Liam. Oh, yeah. Yep. And she said, I'll bring him some cake. Like, he didn't even know that you were in danger. He thought you were on an errand. Yep. But I think the more pressing quote on this that wasn't mentioned, and not to step on like what you wrote out, but no. I think she's starting to remember. I don't know the quote off the top of my head, and I could open it up, but that would take time. But her realizing that Mustang has also been through the mud, so to speak,
and that she's finally coming to a memory of that. I thought that was a good revelation for Lyria, but also tracks for Mustang. Like she hasn't had to face those hardships in a while, and is now kind of in a situation where she needs to really kind of remember the shit that she went through in order to get this built, you know?
That's a great point and a great perspective, I think, on Mustang. It's really interesting. Something that we didn't put into the predictions. What do you think's what's going on with Mustang in the next book, do you think? This is kind of our last touch point with her here inside of the story. What do you think is going on?
So I'll touch on it later, at the end during my predictions, but I think she gets overthrown and dethroned as sovereign. And from there, I don't think she puts up a fight with it. And I think she does what she can to work within the private sector for the Reds that have been displaced unfairly by the Republic in those camps as a direct result of her interactions with Lyria.
Interesting.
It goes more of a philanthropic route.
Okay. I like that idea. So we end Lyria's section in the book
before we move on from there.
Yeah.
I think that really harkens back to the first time we really get to talk to Mustang in Red Rising, where she's singing Eo's song, and it's clear that she has this compassion for what was going on in the moment and the plight of the Reds. She understands it to an extent, and that would be a really poetic return to form in her character arc.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that makes sense as a logical prediction. The section ends, of course, with Lyria under threat of violence. A Brown is in her room pointing a gun at her and says, "House Barca sends their regards." So the story basically ends there, and kind of the questions are, what do you think's in store for our poor Red? What do you think? Do you have any clues or thoughts on who you think the Brown is? What's kind of your read on the whole situation?
So again, this is within the predictions, but at least in the immediate, until Pax and Electra, and really Severo for that matter, are safe and home, I think she's going to be tortured basically until she dies, or they're safe. One of the two. I don't think Victra will really listen to, or even if she entertains the idea of listening to Mustang, I don't think she'll put much weight into it. Maybe the Telemonases, if they come and talk to Victra, maybe they could convince her that Lyria's on the up and up within this whole situation, but mostly I think she'll just be tortured, unfortunately. As far as who the Brown is, clearly it's a cook. And we're really tying together this whole cook theme to the series.
Aruka just shows up out of nowhere, somehow connected from all the way from Gaia and the Rim.
What are Browns other than cooks? Like I know,
cooks, janitors, general work.
Okay.
They're like slightly more specialized Reds.
Okay. So there's the color connection for you. Though red is basically just a more specified brown. But anyway. Sorry, that was dumb. I don't think it's actually a brown. I think it's maybe a gray or someone in disguise.
Okay,
as a means of traveling through the facility unnoticed.
Okay. Chapter 60, Darrow, Ashes to Ashes. Title of this chapter, of course, is great. We finally actually meet a character who's kind of been looming large over.
It seems like way too obvious of a pun.
I don't think that it's necessarily. I don't feel like it's just desserts. Like, it doesn't feel punny to me so much as it feels like very.
I feel like just
point.
Desserts referring to Ashes would have been a better title, a more clever title. This is not a bad title to the chapter by any stretch. Like, it's a great title to the chapter, but I don't think it's that clever. It's a little on the nose.
Well, I think it's meant to be on the nose. I guess that was kind of my point. Is like it's not him.
Didn't
being
you just
clever.
say it was so clever?
I guess I didn't mean clever. I guess I think I mean more like
You might have not said clever, and I just
apt.
Okay. Yeah.
It's that would be more the way that I would think about it.
Okay.
It's very
I feel
apt
like
title.
I feel like fighting today. I'm sorry. I'm scrappy right now.
It's okay. Maybe. So the appearance of
I
the
feel like
ass
fighting
lord,
because you made me finish this book.
I think that I dragged you through this entire thing, so you could really blame it on me in the long term if
You're
you wanted
basically
to.
my personal jackal.
Oh, that's awful. Shit. I guess. I the scepter, you the sword. The appearance. I can't roll out of this that easily. I'm gonna take a drink. Fuck. Wow, this is really strong today. Big oof. All right. So the appearance of the Ass Lord. I mean, the Ash Lord. Is one that is
he is so
very interesting.
decrepit that he has no ass anymore. Let's be real.
Correct. It's just funny that Severo calls him the Ass Lord because clearly that's something that he and the Howlers would probably do over time. Feels very apt before they like charge into the room to do that. It's kind of an anticlimax though, as his demise has happened in quotes, or he's sunk this low from other hands. What did you make of this whole reveal of Magnus Grimace and the state that he's in and everything else?
Obviously, like technically it's at the hands of someone else. It's not at the hands of Darrow or Apollonius or Severo or anybody related to them. But it's kind of at the hands of Apollonius. It's at his word, at his command. But man, I was expecting something. Not from the Ash Lord. Like I wasn't entirely like shocked by this. Not because of what happened to the Ash Lord, but because I still didn't trust anything about Apollonius. So my first thought was, that fucker, I knew it. Not that I knew that this is what he was doing, but because I knew that there was something else. And then it went to, oh shit, like this fucks everything.
Yeah.
But we still get to see him burnt to death. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, like that moment is fantastic. We'll talk about that more when we get there. A little bit more near the end of this. But the whole moment with Magnus is just made to be this like tiny, frail man. And it obviously, as we've mentioned, it really kind of fucks with everything because the suicide mission no longer makes any sense because the Ash Lord is basically in hospice care. Like he is literally hanging on to life.
Yeah.
Not in charge of anything. So it's, I remember the first time that I read this and like there are things hanging around him, but it's not what you think it is. It's metal. They're made of metal and they're keeping him alive. And I was like, fuck, wow, shit.
Yeah.
All that for this? Like, oh no.
It's like fighting Fidel Castro when he's just kind of sick and dying in bed.
Yeah, right. It's like invading Cuba while he's actually dead the whole time.
Yeah, pretty much.
This is actually funny because you were pretty close to this with the Kim Jong-il comment you made a while back.
Yes, I absolutely was.
I had to bring it up.
Was it? Did I make that comment about the Ash Lord?
I believe so.
And I said that it was Atlantia the whole time?
Yes.
Yep, I did. I did say that.
Yep.
Holy shit.
So,
what did you think when I said that?
I was like, I cannot react. I say nothing, Crossland. Say nothing. Okay. All right, we're fine. We're good.
Oh god. I forgot that was like, I knew I talked about Kim Jong-il. I just forgot that was about the Ash Lord.
I think I said something like, that'd be really interesting, like I usually do. And I like just kind of choked up. I remember I think I had to mute myself on my own microphone and just kind of let you continue talking.
Oh, fuck. All right, Crossland, we need to make a supercut of all the like ridiculous predictions that like are way too far off for me to like actually have a good grasp on. And like I'm just making wild shots in the dark.
It's a wild accusation, like absolutely insane.
That has to be the one that I actually didn't believe the most. and thought it'd be funny to liken it to that.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason that I remember not laughing at it immediately is because I didn't want to like give it away, you know? Like that one was a painful one. So I wasn't even like trying to push for it because I was sitting there in just the moment being like, well, all right, what's the next prediction PJ is going to pull out of his asshole? So the destroyer of a civilization too often resembles its founders is a really interesting quote that I liked from the Ash Lord. I think that it's fairly interesting and meta, and I think it really kind of highlights what Darrow has become in this kind of transition to the Reaper. We're going to talk about this a lot over the course of the rest of this book, but this is kind of a signal of that line.
Yeah, and obviously it harkens to the Iron Golds and really makes the title of the book make sense. Along with Lysander and Romulus later on in this section. It's the first time that Darrow was... Not the first time, but the first time in a while that Darrow was really, in a very real way, compared to the Iron Golds. In an explicit way.
Yeah, I think that he kind of had embraced traditions of Iron Golds previously, and so it was mentioned in a couple... I think like even... I want to say it's Roke or something referred to him like a precious Iron Gold or something. The Iron Golds that you so idolize.
I can't remember. It was either Roke or Octavia.
It could have been Octavia. It could have been the Jackal. It's one of the three. Really useless here in terms of my contribution with this random
Yeah, what
quote.
the fuck, Cross? I thought you were like the voracious reader that like understands things and leads this discussion.
Like
this is more proof that I should be the leader.
PJ is talking still and shouldn't be. Good little boy. All right, so Darrow. I can't believe I did that. Darrow. You're right. You're totally right in terms of this is kind of a point of which he's truly kind of given the title. You know, and I've got a lot to say about kind of
it's not explicitly said, but it is very
implied.
Very explicitly implied. Explicitly implied is an oxymoron. But
correct. Yeah.
It is implied to the point where it'd be hard to interpret it any other way.
Yes. Yeah. And that's clearly what Magnus is talking about, staring at the Reaper and kind of thinking about these different things. What's really interesting is if we can compare two arguable Iron Golds right next to each other in their own right? We've got Apollonius, who is striving actively to kind of chase after that Iron Gold dragon of sorts. Like, it's not like he's not like, I want to be an Iron Gold, but he's like, I know how to make myself an Iron Gold. Yeah. And Darrow just kind of is by nature of his mission and his sort of desire to succeed at any cost. And I think it's interesting that these two folks are obviously standing right next to each other as Magnus calls out to Darrow as, you know, effectively calling him an Iron Gold. But
there's a quote later on, and we're going to, like, it's in chapter 63, but I think it's way too apt now to leave it until then, because I think it's really important to bring it up now. And it's the quote from Romulus. Chaos is the nature of man, order, the dream of gold. We were made to shepherd, to unite despite the differences. That is what Romulus told me in the end, and he's right. This is from Lysander, but specifically, we were made the shepherd to unite despite our differences. That's exactly what Darrow's kind of been about the entire fucking time. Like, not necessarily the shepherding part, but that's what Gold is good at. Like, they're good at leading.
I would argue that Darrow himself has been a shepherd.
He has been.
Like, not, he has been. He's not shepherding it through the colors.
He's been fighting for true equality within the colors, which is noble and great and the right thing to do. But by design and by genetic manipulation, each color is good and built for something specific, and they can kind of deviate from that within the Republic if they want to, but they're going to fall into the things that they're good at naturally, for the most part. And Golds are good at leading. They're good at shepherding.
Arguably because they're trained to.
Yes. Yes, that's true. Very arguable. Like, that's a very good argument to make. They're trained to do that. I'd be curious to see, like, is there I'd be curious to see what the actual genetic differences are, because I don't know in this sci-fi world if they have just a different brain than the other colors that can kind of just naturally put them in a state of leadership better, or if they're just trained to do that. That'd be really interesting to see. Because there's obviously other genetically manipulated traits. I don't know if brain function is part of that. If it was, then maybe they should be in leadership positions. If it's not, then fuck what I'm saying. It doesn't matter at all. But just the idea of Darrow as an Iron Gold following that sort of philosophy makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, he always, regardless, he's following the image and life of Lorne and thinking about that constantly and reflecting on it very internally. Wherein Lorne is kind of was a Marcus Aurelius for Darrow. Darrow is kind of also now a Marcus Aurelius. He's kind of been handed the reins and is following kind of a similar path. I mean, not entirely the same, but at the very least philosophically and mentally, he's very much in the same place.
I'm curious about Marcus Aurelius in this moment. Specifically, like just in his life, did he take on personal students like a lot of the philosophers of ancient years did?
So what's weird about Marcus Aurelius is that he wasn't necessarily a philosopher, and all of that was very private. So Meditations is really just his journals. So no one knew that he was like this. They knew the way that he acted and how he behaved and how he held himself as this example. Meditations was never meant to be more than a diary of sorts. But that said, it's not as though he didn't also take on apprentices or, like his own child to kind of his children to kind of try to raise them so they'd follow that example. Of course, epically failed with that one, but
what do you mean?
His first son after he died. Well, so Marcus Aurelius, of course, was an emperor of Rome. I assume you knew that.
Yep.
Yeah. And his son, the next, God, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I want to say it's like Gaius or Caius or something like that. He actually led to basically the end of Rome.
Okay, so that's Darrow then. Straight
Commodus.
Yeah, like that's straight up Darrow. He led to the end of the society.
Well, yeah, but Marcus Aurelius wasn't trying to tear down the society.
Neither was Lorne.
Incidental, accidental. Oh, okay, so you're saying Lorne fits into that. Got it.
No, Lorne is Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, right.
And then Darrow
is...
Yeah, whoever.
Darrow isn't really Commodus, though. Because,
not yet.
Okay. I see where you're going. All right, fair enough. We can leave that hand grenade right there. That live grenade. We'll reapproach it when we finish Dark Age. You can evaluate that grenade again. We'll think about it more. But I don't think you're that far off in terms of a lot of the symbolism here between the characters. Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
We get.
I'm just gonna revel in my thoughts about what's gonna happen. I'm gonna have to read about this dude and see because I don't think I will. I'm not gonna read about it until after I make predictions.
That's fair. With this, we move into what I think is one of the best quotes from Magnus here. It's fantastic in kind of the way that it analyzes things. He says, "I see you kept our scar and our eyes. Then what if red remains?" Darrow replies, "Enough." Magnus continues, "I suppose that is why what every man must tell himself in war, that there will be an end, and when it is done, enough of himself will remain, enough to be a father, a brother, a lover. But we know it isn't true, don't we, Darrow? War eats the victors last." I think that quote is absolutely incredible and fantastic and kind of paints the fantasy that we've continually referenced from that chapter that happened early on with Darrow, in the fact that he's not alone in sharing that fantasy. We've kind of talked about this before with Lorne, referencing this and wanting, for just Darrow to be a good man, not a warrior, and kind of having those same dreams for him. And instead, of course, it became the war machine that we know and love. Darrow is, of course, consumed by this war and the promise of that distant fantasy, and it seems as though Magnus is implying that it's never one that he's going to be able to return to. Right in front of him is someone emblematic of that very fate, that inability to return to the fantasy or to be a parent and to kind of move back to that. We've had plenty of other examples similar in their own right. Fitchner, Nero, Octavia, Lorne even were all consumed by their own wars, their own fights, preventing them from being able to be present in the lives of their children and be the parents that they wanted to be, in addition to the warmongers that they were.
Yeah. So that's a lot.
Yes.
And I think I need to break that up a little bit. So first part of that, he made mention of the scar, of Darrow keeping the scar. And I think it's important to remember that the scar is something that he earned himself through really, it was set up as a trial for the entire gold population, but really it acts as basically a personal trial. And it's something that Darrow achieved on a personal level with some help from ridiculous body manipulation surgeries. Let's not mention that much. But I mean, it brought him into line with golds. But for that, I think it makes total sense for him to have personal understanding of and personal meaning for the scar. I think, yes, it is something that is inherent to gold society, but he can put whatever personal meaning to it that he wants. As far as his eyes go, those were and are still in the head of Severo, so he can't really take those back. I am curious though, does it ever mention the differences in eyesight between the colors? I feel like, just for some reason, I feel like reds have better night vision because they're in the mines, but I don't know if that's actually true. Do you remember that?
I think there was something about that all the way back in the original Red Rising, his eyes being used to the mines and kind of adjusted. The other component, because when he emerges, he's not used to the light at all. And I also think post the surgery, when he gets the new eyes, that's he basically, I think, says something along the lines of everything's sharper, as though the fidelity was turned up.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But getting into the second half of what you rambled on about, in that 30-minute long question, war eats the victors last makes sense in this situation if you don't separate the existence of the Reaper versus Darrow himself. But while they're in the same body, like we've mentioned, we've talked about this. I think we talked about it really at length last episode. They're very clearly two distinct personalities. And in this situation, the Reaper is the victor in the war, but Darrow is the one being consumed. And maybe that's the point that the Ash Lord is trying to make, that all the aforementioned characters, Lorne, Fitchner, Octavia, Magnus, all of them and more, they kind of had to split their personalities too. And their better selves, the ones that are devoted to family and being a good person and just kind of living, suffers and gives way to and leaves only the warlords behind.
I think you hit it on the head as far as the War and Victor's comments comment goes. I think that it is really interesting that the warlords are left to be eaten last, but in reality, they've been eaten and consumed by this the whole time, right? And it consumes the rest of their lives, regardless of when the end actually comes for them. Mm-hmm. You know, they just happen to be the last ones that actually die. That's the difference.
Right.
Yeah. I think that it's also very emblematic to just reference the four that we already talked about: Fitchner, Nero, Octavia, and Lorne. They are emblematic of those sins coming back
Magnus,
to get them.
And the Ashland.
And Magnus, yep, right. They all feel very emblematic of those same choices and sacrifices, and the impact can be seen obviously throughout the series as you take this quote and you can very easily apply it to Fitchner, who was unable to be there for his child and really rear him in an appropriate way. They have a relationship, but they don't have a great one, and Severo constantly reflects on how he wish he had more time with his dad, and dear old dad getting consumed by the war. I don't want that to happen to me and my kids. So he's fighting against that. That's why he's able to separate himself from Ares, because he's seen it.
I think the really interesting part of this is how this doesn't apply to Romulus.
That's true. Actually, not consumed by the leadership at all. But also, he didn't really push for war. He was fighting conflicts. He wasn't a warmonger.
That's true. That's a good point.
You know, he doesn't find himself consumed by it, but he does find himself consumed by the lie that he told. So that's interesting. In terms of the scar, I wanted to kind of work my way back around to that. I think that to just say that he earned the scar and that it was a rite of passage doesn't fully acknowledge that the whole passage was wrong, and that the kind of torture, the psychological torture that he was put through as a kid or as a teenager to earn that, sure, earned it, but he earned it because of the existing power structure, and that's the only reason he had to. So in a way, he probably should have gotten rid of it so as to reject the golds and the society's standards.
But without it,
just
he wouldn't
like
be the
sigils.
Reaper. He wouldn't be the Reaper without it.
No, that's not true. Without the scar on his face, he's still the Reaper.
No, but
he still mentally earned it.
Yes, but I don't think the earning it is the same as earning it in the eyes of a gold child. I think it means two very different things between what he attributes the scar and what it means to a lot of the Peerless Scarred within Gold Society. I think it has two very different meanings, but without what he went through to earn that scar, he wouldn't be the Reaper. He wouldn't be where he is today.
Yeah, of course not. Of course not.
So I think he's attributing, or I think he's putting meaning to that scar, rejecting the meaning that it traditionally has and giving it meaning that is personal to him and what he's achieved and where he's come from.
Which is the achievement of the warlord.
Right, and it has nothing to do with the typical, achievement of the Peerless Scarred.
So that feeds back in, though, to the comment that Magnus is making here. You know, you kept your scar eyes and everything else, and, you know, what of red remains? Darrow later admits that actually nothing of red remains. And to me, the scar is more a symbol of the society, and at the very least, it's something that the people that are of the society can sneer at, like Magnus literally does here, being like, yes, you couldn't forge yourself in the fire, you had to use us as your way to get through everything else. Like, we're still a part of your foundation. You know, you're not as clean, your hands aren't as clean as you think they are. You aren't as removed from the trappings of what came before, of the conquerors, of the golds.
He does, but he never talks about it either.
Correct. So when it's brought up here,
he doesn't even respond to it either. He doesn't bring it up in his response.
No, he doesn't bring it up, but they ask what of red remains, enough, and then later he says nothing of red remains. So I think that
so is nothing, is that, are those the same answer? Or was he lying at one point? Like, is nothing of red enough to continue on? Or
What?
is... So, like, 0% red is enough? Is that what he's saying?
No, I think that he was lying here and saying that enough red, like, whatever, we'll just assign an arbitrary number, 10%, is there, and it's what fuels him. And then later he's saying that, no, there actually isn't any red. I am just the Reaper.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I think
what he says. No, it's not. He says what of red remains, and he says enough.
But then later he contradicts that. That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying is I don't think it's a contradiction. I think 0% red for him is enough.
Meaning no red is enough.
Correct.
Which means he's the same.
Or the
he's
memory,
not actually
the memory of red.
That's
Is it contradictory? I don't think it is.
So here's the quote from 594. The red boy inside me would run home to his family, but I cannot. The Ash Lord was right. Nothing of red remains. I am trapped in my duty. Like Lorne, like Magnus, like Octavia.
Okay. Simply because of the existence of the Ash Lord was right in that quote proves you right and me wrong. But I don't know.
I mean, there is something to be said that Darrow is an unreliable asshole who occasionally like lies to us.
I feel like Pierce has learned from his mistakes since then.
Perhaps.
I didn't actually see that what I just referenced as an egregious problem, but a lot of people do.
Oh no, yeah, I don't either. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about this. Just to come to a conclusion to some degree. Magnus is right. I mean, regardless, Magnus calls a spade here, and even though Darrow's willing to fight him on it,
yeah,
I mean, I agree with Magnus for sure.
Yeah,
like
I do too. The fight that I was putting up against you was whether or not
the Scar.
Darrow believed. Well, the Scar is different. The Scar's a different fight that I'll fight tooth and nail about because I feel like it. But
I'm punchy today.
I am punchy today. But when I was trying to rationalize all of this and really think about what was going on, my brain immediately went to, there is no red left. Darrow knows that, but he also knows that red wasn't helpful for him in this situation and in the position that he's in. So no red being left is still enough red.
Right. That makes enough sense.
But that second quote that you brought up kind of debunks that a little bit.
Right. I can understand that being the reaction read, though, off the bat. The one other thing that I want to bring up here with the Scar is something that you said. I think you might be right in the way that he wears it as a reminder, perhaps. That could work. It never gets so explicit as saying that.
Yeah,
you know?
He kind of brushes it off. But because there are other things in the conversation with the Ash Lord, in that sentence, in that paragraph that the Ash Lord says, that are more pressing to respond to.
Right. The other thing that I want to bring up here, too, is that he doesn't have sigils on his hand, though, which is like a reminder of the society. So why wouldn't he get rid of the Scar? It feels like a parallel thing.
That's why I feel like it's a more personal growth thing, that's a reminder of what he went through in order to achieve this.
Versus something that was just given to him by the society.
Correct.
It's interesting.
Because the sigils are not earned. He didn't have to go through anything to earn the sigils. He just had to be born. But the Scar, he actually had to suffer. He suffered a lot. He suffered a lot more than most Peerless Scarred.
True.
On a personal level.
That's without a doubt. I'm now just imagining Darrow as the Joker going like, you want to know how I got these scars? To everyone, like bragging about it.
Yeah.
No, but I see where you're coming from, and that makes sense. I just still I sit in this question of like, why.
I think we could honestly, this question, I think we could have a full on 2-hour episode on. Like, I think this is
true.
the longest we've ever gone on a single question, ever.
Probably true. Except for maybe the conversation about Darrow and the Reaper last week, but...
Maybe.
It's got to be close.
Maybe.
So with that, let's move into the next little bit here. And then, of course, the reveal that we discussed earlier, Apollonius poisoned Magnus from Deep Grave, and Atlantia has been pulling the strings for the last 3 years. The Ash Lord even fires his own words back at him that we've heard before in the very first book. I would have lived in peace, but they brought me war, is what was said in the first book. And he basically recants it. Magnus recants it from Atlantia that she would have lived in peace, but will bring war.
That dick, first of all. What a fucking bastard Apollonius is.
Mm-hmm.
But God, like, does it give some sense to what Apollonius did? Like, how he held himself the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was calm. He was never hostile. Like, he I would have expected some hostility, and he never showed any. So this makes all of that make sense.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, if you knew, so if you're in his shoes, right, and you've got a bomb in your head, and Darrow's like, I want to take out the Ash Lord, you're like, well, I disabled the Ash Lord, but if I let you know that, you could disband with me, and it would change everything if you knew that. Right. So he continues with it anyway to try to earn himself his freedom.
Right.
The Ash Lord kind of drops a final bomb on the group of them. He knows of the children's abductions, despite everything Virginia has done to keep it quiet. It's slipped its way back into the society remnant, and both Severo and Darrow kind of break down at those moments. He also poses it as a question to Darrow. It was one of yours that sold out the kids. Who do you think that could possibly be? Okay.
We focused so much on her when she was first mentioned. Like, this is clearly a meta answer. Like, this is a me and you talking meta answer, which I don't think is that fair, but it's all I thought about the entire time. Like, we focused on her a ton for like an episode or two.
Okay.
And then she really wasn't present in the book for the rest of the time. So
until she died last week.
Did she?
Yeah, she got cut in
decapitated.
Half.
She got cut in half. That's still enough time. She's still alive enough. Like, that could have easily have just been any other Howler. That she was alive long enough to have done this, and she was brought in to all of this through kidnapping, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, she was kidnapped in the Institute, and I could easily see her as plotting for years to bring this whole thing down. Yeah, so a little bit meta, but I think we focused too much on Milia for her not to be a more important aspect of this story, to just get cut down unceremoniously. So, her.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Then the Ash Lord burns, and the bill finally comes due for him, in Lauren's words. One big bad down, and maybe some more to go.
Maybe?
Maybe?
I think it's a little bit beyond maybe at this point. We know who they are. There's a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
There's question whether or not Lysander is a big bad at this point.
That's interesting. Do you have any other thoughts on the big bads?
Well, I mean, there's Dido. There's
sure.
Axolotl Atalantia. So that's 3. There's Dancer, who's not necessarily a strict military adversary, but you could consider him an adversary at this point. There's still the idea of, is the Red Hand still in existence? I think they are.
Yeah, Harmony, the Red Hand.
Yeah, so there's that. And that didn't get any sort of resolution in this book.
Nope. It got picked up at the beginning of the book, and then we moved on.
There's a bunch.
Yeah.
There's a lot of problems. And I think Darrow should just kind of lie down and take a nap for a while.
Think about it. Do some meditating. Darrow, of course,
write some meditations, maybe.
Write some meditations, perhaps, yeah. Maybe these are secretly his meditations. Darrow reemerges. The veil of safety he thought he had built for his family shattered. The quote here, all I wanted was to be a father, and now my son is lost.
I think he hides behind. I think that's his safety blanket. That's his security blanket to a certain extent. Like, oh no, I just wanted to be a dad. Like, just let me be a dad. And I don't think it's genuine in the slightest. I think it's what he reverts to when things aren't going well. But he wants to be the Reaper. I think he wants to. I think he has to also, but I think he wants to. And I think he's trying to fight against that want. I think he's trying to fight against that desire, but I think he really, really wants to.
I think he also wants to be a father, but I don't think that he wants it as bad as he wants other things.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Like that's really the thing. That's really kind of my comment on it, is it's like he's not saying the only thing I wanted was to be a father. He's saying all I wanted was to be a father. Hey folks, I don't have a really good way of cutting back from this question. PJ and I ended up discussing this for near 25 minutes, some semantics around some word choice that was used instead of this quote, and I quoted it wrong. So I'm just going to save you guys the time, cut out that argumentative banter, and get right back to it. So I try not to do this often, but it felt really necessary given the context of everything else around this section. What's even worse is that I actually quoted it wrong. You ready for this? Yeah.
Okay.
All I wanted to be then was a father.
Okay.
And now my son is lost.
It changes everything.
So we go from that to chapter 61, Lysander, the Moon Lord.
You're going to cut me off like that?
Just like that. Just like that.
Okay.
It's even more meta. That's hilarious. The trial and the evidence is really...
Also,
I was taking a drink. It was terrible. What?
Oh, no. I just opened a new beer.
Nice. I think that the trial and the evidence is really interesting. The idea of having the charge levied against the accuser if the accused is proven false is, I think, an interesting one. You know, as Lysander says, it's draconic, but it's interesting.
It is draconic, but and it's also open to some really harsh injustice, much like just capital punishment in general is open to injustice if things are improperly ruled. But ultimately, I don't wholly disagree with the idea of a harsh retribution for false allegations.
I mean, it's like libel, right?
Yeah, kind of. I am curious, what would the repercussions be for a state trial in which the defendant is ruled innocent? And I guess this is kind of a state trial, right?
Yeah.
But Dido is the one bringing up the accusations, so she's the one responsible for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like this system would leave a lot of really intense criminals untouched because nobody wants to try to accuse them of anything to bring up the case, because they'd be the ones on the gallows if they're proven innocent. So, like,
yeah,
in a perfect world where you could truly like determine innocence and guilt, great. Like, I am totally for this, but in the world that we live in, and even this sci-fi world that we're reading about, things are a little bit more muddy than that, and things are subjective, and things are ruled incorrectly sometimes. And that's one of the most compelling arguments against capital punishment is just improper rulings.
Yeah. I think that the whole thing is very, it's a robustly interesting and complicated system, despite sort of the simple whatever you accuse of, the punishment is back on you, basically. So don't do anything without evidence.
But the golds and the iron golds and the rim golds specifically are not selfish. Selfish isn't the word I'm looking for. They're arrogant enough to believe that they'll rule justly regardless, and that they'll find the truth. So I think it makes sense to have that system in place, because that system makes sense if you can truly prove what happened. And they have have the hubris to do that.
Right. I think hubris is a good word for that too. How that covers it. The read on the actions of an Iron Gold are interesting as well. I think that maybe we should interrogate the idea more, since it's kind of Lysander who's really kind of thinking about everything in terms of whether or not someone is or isn't an Iron Gold. So given that Iron Golds were conquerors, it's important to remember they committed mass genocide. They, absolutely decimated an entire population, and they thought of their life to be superior to others, and so sought to cleanse a world of all those who disagreed with the color hierarchy as they had adapted to space. They established the society as we knew it. These were all kind of like traits that were being honored, but they should actually spell a little bit more like doom and gloom and eugenics, and like we hear a lot of praise for it over the course of this series. Obviously, we're mostly listening to the upper echelons of the Gold Society for the first two books, and then for the third book, we kind of escaped that a little bit. But it's just good to remind ourselves that maybe because Lysander cares about Iron Gold so much, he's kind of idolizing the old ways. And sure, Romulus is an Iron Gold, and hell, like we said earlier, Darrow even embodies all of the traits of an Iron Gold, as does Apollonius. But that's not an objectively good thing to, aspire to be. Like, honor's good, but the rest of the baggage isn't that great.
I think I can understand what Lysander and really anybody who's aspiring to be an Iron Gold is thinking at this moment. And it either simply ignores the genocide or justifies it based on the idea that those deaths were sacrifices in order to birth the entire civilization that they're a part of. Like the conquering of Earth gave birth to the society that rules the solar system. Like it's what allowed humanity to leave Earth and populate the rest of the galaxy. It's horrible. They're horrible, terrible acts, but they're the acts that made the society possible. And for that reason, they see it as something to be honored. And I think in a real world, in real life kind of example of that, we've got the Crusades and what the Crusades did for Christianity. Christianity wouldn't be so widespread if it weren't for the Crusades, and the Crusades were essentially genocide.
Yes. The Crusades get a lot more complicated than that, but yeah, I see what you're going for.
So does the conquering of Earth by the Iron Golds, I'm sure, if you want to get granular about it. But we don't see that in this. We don't see that described in the book series.
Yeah. I guess my point is it was less. The thing that I balk a little bit at is the totality of the Christian faith being invoked there versus the sort of Catholic diocese, which is what was in charge of the Crusades.
Okay, so Catholicism and the Crusades then.
Right.
Okay, I misspoke.
It's a minor
Sorry.
thing, but it's a minor thing. But all told, that just saying that it's the Catholic Church it also points it a little bit more directly at the politics of the situation. That said, that comparison is very apt in terms of what they were trying to accomplish and sort of any sort of conqueror or colonial mindset. We can very clearly and easily see that.
And I mean, my description of that clearly shows my lack of understanding of the nuance between Christianity as a whole and Catholicism.
All this to say that, I agree with you in terms of the sort of. I think it even becomes more apt when you like separate out, like I just did. Those were that was the old Catholic Church. This is the new, and that's also probably a fucking argument that little whiny boy Lysander would make. Yeah, is like the standards. I think it's
a completely fair argument to make as well.
Yeah, right. Right.
I think the quote, "It was, but we forgot." Like that's exactly the point he's making. Like, the gold society of today is not what it was meant to be.
Right.
And what he's fighting for and what the Rim is fighting for is what gold was meant to be, what it was supposed to be. And I mean, I mentioned it before. The quote, like, I really think we should have put this quote at the beginning, and I'm scrolling down to try to find it again. But do you know where it's at? I keep missing it.
We were made to shepherd, to unite despite our differences.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, that's, I think I mentioned it before, but the cafeteria Catholics, that is the antithesis of what it means to be a Catholic. Even though it's following some of the principles, it's only following some of the principles, and it ignores some of the important ones as well. Like, if you want to be something, you have to follow the tenets of what it was built on, and ignoring it bastardizes it.
Here's an interesting question. So are you saying that Lysander is a cafeteria iron gold?
No, I'm saying that what I'm saying is Lysander and Romulus are both striving to be what iron golds were supposed to be.
Sure.
And
the old Looney's golds are more like cafeteria golds.
Well, the core golds, Octavia and everyone else in the core, are kind of the cafeteria gold, iron golds.
That makes sense.
Yep.
That's a good comparison. I like that.
Yeah. Because it follows the rules, but it ignores a lot of the rules.
You pick and choose, like you said, cafeteria.
Yep, exactly.
A la carte.
Yep.
So, because did we already talk about this? Did I mention what I thought cafeteria Catholicism meant?
I don't remember.
Like, they would all go hang out in the cafeteria post. Like you're just doing it for the socialization aspect.
I don't think we talked about that, but if we did, I don't remember it, and I still find it funny.
I don't think I mentioned it, but like literally, like St. Aug's or whatever in town, like you'd go to church and then you'd have donuts afterwards, like everyone would have donuts and chat. And so when you said cafeteria Catholic, that's immediately where my brain went. It's like, oh, you just go to church for the social. Anyway. And then chance strikes to levy additional charges. Romulus is accused of treason, of knowledge of burning the burning of the docks of Ganymede, and he admitted. He acknowledges that he knew about the burning from a holodrop, the same one that was offered to Seraphina. He is destined to be executed, as we see a little bit later here. What do you think of his admission as well as kind of the speech on honor?
I think this is what makes me love Romulus as a character. Like, I love Romulus's character because of how he reacts to all of this stuff. He has such rigid scruples that he will adhere to them no matter what. He is so committed. I can't fault him for that. I can't like him, but I can't fault him either. Like, it makes him an ironclad character for me. Like, he does not falter from what he believes in to the end.
No, not in the slightest.
And it makes me respect his character more than anybody else in this entire series.
What's so interesting is that I, after reading this book, have a level of appreciation for the Rim that is so deep. And it's not necessarily just Romulus. It's the fact that we've been told and taught that these are scruples that are at the very least attempted to be instilled into all of the various children. We see this in Lorne trying to treat everything more like the Rim. We see we see Diomedes, who's basically a younger version of Romulus in a lot of ways, following that same kind of path. And man, I totally agree with you. Romulus is the most respectable character.
In a very strange turn of events from this section, from this chapter, I do not necessarily like Romulus. But Romulus is my favorite character of the entire series because of how true he is to who he is and what he believes in. Yes, more than Kavix.
Kavix is kind of the same, though. You know? Like, he's not fucking around.
But he doesn't... Kavix has not been presented...
About his scruples and... Yeah.
He hasn't been presented in that. Like, presented with the, like, opportunity to express his scruples like Romulus has.
Sure. Yep.
So, while I love Kavix, and I will not let go of that undying love of Kavix, I'm willing to say that Romulus is my favorite character as far as how the character is written and how he presents himself.
All right.
I think he's the most well-written and like most disciplined character of the series.
I was really curious when we got to him in Morningstar and kind of revisiting him from that lens after having recently reread the sequel series. When I reapproached him, I was like, he even back then had a lot of these same kind of scruples and thought processes, and you can see them spinning in motion. Like
I'd like to go back and reread that.
Yeah, it's a great reread for a number of reasons, of course, because we have a deeper understanding of everything that was actually going on and kind of the lie of the nukes and things like that. So recommend for sure, but it's I am a little bit hesitant to say that on air because yes, it's at the very least not advocating for freedom and equal choice for everyone. Right. So.
But he makes very good points, and he's advocating for something that I think is truly, like I think it's truly parallel to what Darrow and Virginia would want in a society of the Golds as the shepherds.
We're left with his sentence to be returned to dust, and that's an interesting parallel, losing two of the big patriarchs of the different families to give way to the matriarchs who end up filling this void.
So, two patriarchs. Which two are you talking about?
Magnus and Romulus.
Okay.
Yep. And then Dido and Atalantia, arguably.
So, I think it's...
Atalantia isn't a mom, but...
I think it's interesting to make that comparison because the Ash Lord hasn't been an actual real force within the world for 3 months.
3 years.
3 years, yes. So nothing actually changes with his death. Like it doesn't shift. The only shift is we're referring to the adversary as who she really is, rather than who she's pretending to be. She's pretending to be her father, and she's really Atalantia. But the motivation, the process, everything stays the same. Whereas...
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking more about the families themselves, and less the... I mean, I agree with family? You in the terms of the society.
The family for the Ash Lord is literally just him and Atalantia at this point.
Yeah, right. But also it's like a whole like house. Like it's not...
Who else is there? I don't think any of the Furies have children.
No, but the houses have sub-houses, right? So they're like houses that report up to...
That still doesn't matter then. Because they're reacting to things that, quote-unquote, the Ash Lord does. and they are agreeing or disagreeing with them and following through. And at this point, we learn that Atalantia is effectively the Ash Lord. She is not Magnus Algrimus, but she is the Ash Lord based on how she's been acting going forward. So it doesn't actually change what any of the houses have done because they have agreed to go forward with whatever propositions Atalantia has set. And maybe they change their mind when they learn that the person giving them orders wasn't actually Magnus, but it shouldn't. Ideally it should be the same either way because they should have the scruples enough to make decisions based on what they believe in, not who's giving the orders. And I know that that's not necessarily true for everybody, but like that's how it should be, right?
Yeah, I guess again, I'm thinking less about the orders and more about like family hierarchy. You're totally right, though.
But
like
there's only
actually
2 members of the house, and it's him,
correct,
who's dead, and Atalantia, who's already been in charge for 3 years.
Yes, so the parallel is that we're losing 2 of the patriarchs, one of whom was already lost.
I don't think we're losing a patriarch here.
We are.
Because the patriarch, it implies that he's in charge. And he's not. We lost him 3 years ago.
Well, it specifically does when you talk about dust to dust versus ashes to ashes. So that's why like it makes a lot of sense to have this parallel, which is kind of what I was trying to get to. Like the point here is less the obviously they have differing impacts, which is exactly what you brought up, which I think is spot on. Right? Like Aja has already effectively been wielding her father's title and name, even if it's, in a very Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. Atalantia, sorry. Has been wielding it in a very like Wizard of Oz kind of way, right? So far as we know. That seems to be the impression that we get. All that I'm trying to draw as a comparison is that they're physically gone now. Like, regardless of the other impacts on the stories, we see the Ash Lord return to ash, and we see Romulus go to dust. And both of these rotate around kind of their family phrases, and we see these kind of these parallels emerge between the two of them. Even over the courses of their lives, they've also been diametrically. That's the other reason that I was bringing up the 2 patriarchs thing, is they are diametrically opposed. Like Magnus burned one of the Rim Lord's moon's fucking moons with 63 million people on it. So they are definitely and have been for their entirety of their lives on opposite sides of the coin.
Too many people for a single moon. They deserved it. Fuck them. Fuck Rhea.
Justice for Phobos. But yeah, so I totally get it though. On the Atalantia side, you're totally correct in that like your analysis and picking apart what she's doing and the fact that basically Darrow and what was done here was basically a complete wash and worthless is totally true. Matter of fact, they expended more resources than it was worth and exposed themselves. So we move into chapter 62, Lysander, Iron Gold. We've obviously talked a lot about the definition of kind of the Iron Golds and the way that they lead, and kind of Romulus is this true example of kind of the Iron Golds themselves. I think that it's fascinating, of course, that finally the chapter title in this book is really talking about the death of Romulus, most of all, and kind of giving him that true send-off as a real Iron Gold.
Yeah, I think that Romulus's declaration in Iron Gold exists in this world it's something that tells me that he really cares about his forefathers. And that was something that you could kind of see in his character basically the entire time that he's existed within this series. The fact that he sees Lysander as an Iron Gold and as an adequate representation of what it meant to be an Iron Gold is probably the most realistic honor that it could be, as far as considering yourself an Iron Gold, which Lysander has said he called himself an Iron Gold, and to get Romulus's basically stamp of approval of that statement is really fucking important, I think, and a really strong endorsement, especially because of who Romulus is.
Yeah, I think that you jumped a little bit ahead of where I was, but I think you're totally on it. The part, of course, that you're talking about a little bit here is when Lysander kind of Lysander gets pulled aside by Romulus and basically has this conversation about kind of their forefathers together, like you said.
Oh, I thought that was this conversation.
Well,
that's my bad.
I didn't read a question. I just asked a question. That wasn't on the. So I totally get it. But it fits. You're totally right. So, it's Lysander's new quest. It's sort of it becomes this, I can be this iron gold. I should strive to be like Selenius, because Selenius and Akari are these two forces, the scepter and the sword, that manage to pull it all together, Mm-hmm. So, yeah, like you said, I mean, what do you make of Lysander's new quest?
To build an army and like form a pincher maneuver with the rim.
I'm thinking less about that, and I'm thinking more. I think more about like the sort of internal quest to like become this iron gold and represent to their forefathers.
Okay, I can see that. It makes me think that Romulus and his like 3 or 4 day influence on Lysander was more important than the decade that Cassius imprinted upon him. Which kind of spits in the memory of who Cassius is. But at the same time, it maintains who Lysander has been for the last, 3/4 of this book, basically.
You're totally right. I mean, it's the whole, like, the kid is dead, the man is born, and the kid had all of those beliefs of Cassius, but now the man is forming new beliefs.
But it's also, the kid has completely died and has not influenced the man in the slightest.
Yep. Right.
Which doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it's not that he hasn't influenced him, it's that he thinks that the goal, like Cassius's goals were foolish.
What has Cassius done that has influenced Lysander?
A sense of honor. There are a ton of things that maintain with Cassius, for sure. However, he does not agree with Cassius that like Darrow and the Republic is a good thing, obviously. And that's been a silent source of disagreement for the two of them anyway.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know though. I don't know if I agree with you. And I just need more context. And I won't get it in this book because this book is done. So it feels to me like Lysander has completely ignored anything that he's learned from Cassius. He never at any point when he's talking about being an iron gold, he never mentions Cassius. He mentions his lineage and his grandmother and his upbringing before going on the run with Cassius. But he never mentions any sort of imprint that Cassius has had in his life.
Well, because Cassius is at odds with that goal.
Yeah, so that's my point.
But he's not ignoring it, because he's still, when he was in the cell when Cassius had died, he was still reflected on all of the things that he got from Cassius, like his sense of honor, like the idea that he would go back for those people. Like that is something that Cassius inspired and gave him. And he does still think about the Vindabona and what he should have done there, what an iron gold would have done there. That's in this chapter.
But wasn't that also like a comment on that was my downfall ultimately? Like, if we hadn't done that, Cassius would still be alive.
Right, if he hadn't gone back for Serafina, that's really kind of the downfall. Why only save the gold? Becoming so preoccupied with her prevented him from seeing, with his own color, prevented him from seeing all of the other lives he could have saved, which is why the Vindabona still haunts him. So that makes sense.
Right.
I love the quote that we get here between Romulus and Dido, that recounting again their entire relationship. I will love you until the sun dies, and when it does, I will love you in the darkness. And that is such a fantastic and emotional line and moment.
It really kind of it evoked for me the quote from, is it Endgame? No, it's not Endgame.
It's Endgame.
It is Endgame? Okay.
Yes.
The quote between Tony Stark and his daughter of "I love you 3000," which I never understood why that was something that people latched onto. But it really doesn't have the same ring to it. It really doesn't make any fucking sense. And like, why is that a memorable quote? It doesn't make fucking sense. I don't like it. I hate it, to be perfectly frank, because people regurgitated it constantly. And this is a way better quote.
This is a way better quote. No dispute there. I think part of the reason for the fascination with the line "I love you 3000" is because it's a very real thing that a kid would say.
Yeah, and kids are dumb.
I mean, that can be your opinion.
It's true.
Kids,
they're not smart.
I'm not here to debate children with you. But that's also the point, is there's, they haven't lost that innocence yet. And so there is just, what do I say? I say I love you 3000 because 3000 is the biggest number that I can comprehend.
Stupid kids.
All right. What did you make of the trip to Akari's grave and the walk in the dust?
Oh, dude, I love that scene. I really loved it. I think that one thing I'm really curious about is if they're actually immortalized in the dust like that at 100 or negative 100 degrees Celsius, or if they're safely picked up by any sort of spacecraft, I guess, if they don't make it to the Dragon's Tomb. Dragon's Tomb? Right?
Yes.
Dragon's Tomb. Yes. If they don't make it there, I'm curious if they're immortalized in the dust there and allowed to be consumed by the wasteland, or if they're picked up by any sort of spacecraft and laid to rest somewhere else. But I like to think that they're immortalized in their attempt.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there were others. If I remember correctly, like they point out, hunched frozen bodies litter the dune around the tomb and cling to the rock formation itself. Ra, who in old age or punishment or shame came here to die, and in death seek to reach their ancestor and erect a humble monument to their own strength. Only
Perfect.
4 have ever made it to the Dragon Tomb. Yeah, so they are there. They are not rescued by anything else.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's such a cool image.
Yeah.
And
I love it. I absolutely love that as an opportunity to immortalize yourself when sentenced to die, essentially.
It's also like tragically unfortunate that he doesn't make it when we know that 4 others have made it, because this appears to be the most honorable man. But then again, the walk in the dust isn't necessarily about honor.
No,
it's not.
I don't necessarily think that that's a slight. I think it makes him more honorable to try. I don't think it matters whether or not he makes it, but his honor and his scruples and what he believed in gave him the opportunity and afforded him the opportunity to do this. And who cares if he makes it? He got the opportunity to try. And no matter what, honestly, the fact that he didn't make it means that more people will see him.
Witness me. Akari, witness me.
Mm-hmm.
Witness me. I totally, every time I read that, it's Mad Maxy for some reason in my mind.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's an incredible moment. With that, we move into chapter 63, Lysander Lux Ex Tenebris. So we end one chapter with the Raw family motto, dust to dust or something like that, dust for all in the end, into and kick off the next with the Loon family motto. And it's fantastic. We've actually talked through a lot of this already, so really, I mean, we've got a little bit here, but chaos is the nature of man, order, the dream of gold. We were made to shepherd, to unite despite our differences. That is what Romulus said to me in the end, and he is right. And we've talked about this a lot.
We have. Like, I really don't have anything new to say.
I just want to mention that the quote is here.
Dude, it's so good. But it also shifted my entire perception of the political hierarchy of this entire book. And not in my personal beliefs of who's right and who should be taken as the hero. But the villain of Romulus, it has, through this quote, become my favorite character. And I don't understand how that happened. I love it, but I don't get it. You know?
The way that it kind of occupies your brain, I totally agree with you. I was totally struck by the Rimlords and Romulus in particular in this book. And Diomedes as well, who has a similar kind of honor complex.
Yeah, but less...
I mean, Diomedes hasn't had the same opportunities.
I thought you meant Dido for some reason.
Oh, no. Diomedes. Yeah, not Dido.
Diomedes, sure. Yes. I agree with you. I think Diomedes has the possibility of becoming what his father is.
Yes.
I don't think he's there yet, but I think he has given himself the opportunity to get there. And I'm excited to see in Dark Age whether or not that happens.
Okay. Yeah, that's exciting. That's an exciting thing to look forward to.
Yep.
With Diomedes. And it seems, our final point, we had kind of discussed this a little bit ahead of time. It seems as though Dido agrees she will send Lysander to the core to find allies to fight against the Rising, kind of a solar system style pincer attack from the Rim and the core.
So I can't remember. Did she refer to it as the Rising? Or did she refer to it as the Republic? Because those are effectively the same thing. But there's a pretty meaningful difference as far as her understanding of what the war is and who she's fighting.
She calls it the Rising.
She does call it the Rising.
Yep.
Then I think she's kind of doomed.
So, okay, explain more as to why.
Because she's underestimating them. Because she is effectively and explicitly underrepresenting what they've accomplished. And she is seeing them as a fly to be swatted as opposed to an actual enemy. And I think that is going to, like, her hubris in that effect is going to be her downfall. She is going to continue to underestimate them because simply, this is a prediction, I guess. This should go in the predictions, but because of her minusculization of who she's fighting, she is going to underestimate them going forward and get caught off guard with an overwhelming force that she wasn't prepared for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's a really interesting read on it. I don't necessarily read it the same, but I totally see where you're coming from. You're, of course, providing the whole context. I see her, and I think that that's actually the way to look at it from the whole context perspective, given like our position as the reader. I feel like she's saying the Rising not to kind of besmirch the whole thing, to kind of invalidate the Republic in her own mind. I do agree with you, though. I think that because of that, she is underselling it. Kind of, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So actually, the ideas fit together. It's not the opposite at all. But like, it's kind of it's because of her, like you said, hubris that she really doesn't. She doesn't fully understand what she's up against. Then again, Dara didn't have to fight the Rim last time, so.
Yeah, but she's not the Rim.
Dido's rallying the Rim, though. That's the...
Yeah, but she's rallying it like a core...
I don't know if that's... I kind of know what you're getting at, but I don't know if that's true, though, because they all kind of agreed as Cassius cut everyone down, and over the course of the trial, all of the various lords agreed and sided with her.
Yeah. No, that's true. I feel like Romulus embodied what it meant to be part of the Rim.
Yeah.
And Dido is not that in the slightest. And
that's true.
Even if all of the other Rim lords are also not that, and they follow in line with Dido in what she believes and what she is pushing towards, it doesn't seem like that's in the spirit of the Rim. And I guess at that point that changes what the spirit of the Rim is, because there's a critical mass of people in the Rim, leading the Rim, not falling into line with that. But it'd be tough to say that Dido is in control of what it means, like of the Rim forces, because those forces aren't fighting for what it means to be part of the Rim. And it's fucking nitpicky, and I don't think it actually matters. But that's where where my brain's going. You know?
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time articulating what I'm thinking.
Some might call that alcohol.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
I think sober, I'd also be I'd also be hard pressed to find what I mean here in a succinct way.
Oh, I understand. I understand your intention, at the very least, from the perspective of this. It wouldn't be really the Rim that we know going to war. It would be the Rim going to war for the society, like the Rim people, not the ideology of the Rim.
That's basically what I'm trying to say. Yes.
Yeah. That's totally what you're getting at. So I totally follow. That's why I said I was joking about the alcohol thing, because you were making sense.
It's true. You're right. I just even now, well, specifically now, in a state of not sobriety, I can't think of what I would do to articulate what I was trying to say. So, well done. You did better than I could. So,
yeah. Good. Sweet. I didn't mean to say yeah as though like I'm patting myself on the back, for the record.
No, you're good.
So we move into chapter 64, Ephraim, Locust Queen. This is really just like a page and a half, so we're going to probably go through it like it's a page and a half, or 20 pages, because that's what we do. But there's only really two things to talk about here. The first, we kind of discussed in the front end, but the Queen of the Syndicate taking control of the ship and starting to send them back is just like a total it feels ripped straight out of a science fiction movie. It feels great, and it is a stressful moment and scene, considering Ephraim is totally bleeding out, and there's a couple of kids who may or may not know how to fly a plane.
Yeah.
A ship, if you will.
Yeah. Basically, the only thing going through my mind that entire time, the entire chapter here, which you mentioned was like a page and a half, but basically, top to bottom was fuck. Like, what the fuck is going on? And that's basically it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then worse yet, the chapter only gets crazier.
It does.
Ephraim has a fucking crazy idea, very Ephraim-like of him, and throws a grenade into a pile of grenades to knock it out of the air and put them down in an emergency landing in a crater. And then his fucking perspective fades in the most infuriatingly well good cliffhanger ending of any of these endings.
Yep.
I like the fucking... I knew this was going to be a one-way ticket. ... Are you fucking kidding me, Pierce? Dude.
Yeah.
Good stuff, though.
Yep. Just fucking damn it. I just want to know. I just want to know, man.
Just want to know what happens to Ephraim.
Like, I don't care so much about Ephraim. Just tell me whether or not the children are dead.
That's even... No, I love you 3000 from PAX, I guess.
Of course not. Like, who's he going to say that to?
I know. I'm just kidding. All that I meant is...
maybe... what's her fucking name? Theodora?
I'm being an ass. But... it is...
But
it
maybe
is funny
Theodora gets the I love you 3000 from PAX.
Yeah. Could be. Where'd we go here now? Next now here. How? Okay, so we go into chapter 65. This is our final chapter of the book. We've made it, PJ. We've made it. Chapter 65, Darrow, the Rending. And God damn it, Darrow. His trust in Virginia, like his not trusting Virginia, hollow tone about his own mistakes here is like a dagger pulled from his heart, dripping like sanguine blood. It's fucking awful. This is a despicable... He's realized the folly of his errors in the grandest of ways.
But I think he's right.
Oh, of course he's right. He's
like,
totally correct.
It's cold and it's really upsetting for Severo to hear. But this is like the actual logical approach to things. He understands, like he makes a point of pointing out that either Pax is dead and he can't do anything about that, or Virginia will save them. Mm-hmm. Because like they're 4 months out. Like what the fuck are they gonna do?
Yep.
So like he is in a logical mindset. But that said, that logical mindset is not that of Darrow, it's that of the Reaper.
I'd actually push back a little bit on that. I think it is actually the mindset of Darrow, regardless, because I think Darrow would also think about this. So
I can concede to that. I think it. I don't know. It makes it seem like that he's given up as a father in general. But he's put them in the situation that they're in, and he needs to figure out a way to get them all out of it. Because if he just kind of gives up and goes home, everyone loses. He may be on the moral high ground by giving up and going home and trying to make sure that he finds his son. But everybody loses from his perspective. So I think he makes the right choice here to not rush home on the news that he's been told.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely making the right choice, right? We both agree in that this is totally the correct decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just such a tough thing to admit to yourself.
But it's also the end of a lot of friendships, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't think that makes sense either. But we'll get into that. Let's keep going.
Yeah. The So we mentioned this earlier as well, and we had kind of talked through this a little bit when we were talking about Magnus earlier. The red boy inside me would run home to his family, but I cannot. The Ash Lord was right. Nothing of Red remains. I am trapped in my duty, like Lorne, like Magnus himself, like Octavia. And it is a stark realization that he comes to realize that he is in fact paralleled. All these people that he looked up to, fought against for decades, whichever way you want to paint it or spin it, he is one of them now.
Yeah. Yeah, he has become within those ranks. But that's kind of the trajectory that he's put himself on from the beginning. And it's dependent on the Reaper of Mars overshadowing Darrow of Lagos.
Totally. Yeah. And that is a great way to look at it, especially considering we talk about the Red Boy here. Yeah. And even more so, this is him double validating what he was confirming at the beginning that we were just talking about is, the Red Boy inside of me would run back, Severo would run back, but I am more the Reaper than I am Darrow. Even though I do still stand by the fact that I think that he starts off this thought that logic is Darrow and then kind of recedes to realize that even more so, he is the Reaper.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely.
That, of course, leads to the real fight, the real collapse of a friendship here that we've been following for books now. Darrow will not go, and Severo cannot believe that he won't chase after their children, and Severo makes the decision to go and leave. Darrow holds nothing against him, of course, for the decision, but...
I completely understand the frustration and the anger that Severo is showing here. I have no ill will towards his feelings at this moment. I completely get it. And 100%, I understand the anger. But at the same time, he put himself here. He had every opportunity to say no. And to quit and to stay at home. And even his wife understood that you could never keep him back from this.
Right, yeah. That's actually a great point, is that Mustang knew that there was no preventing...
Victra.
Oh, Victra. Yeah, sorry. Victra knew that there was no... I thought you were talking about Mustang and Darrow, but
no,
it also obviously fits with...
Severo. Yeah.
Yeah, it obviously also fits with Victra. Victra was also very particular about making sure that he comes back alive, and I guess he is, so far as we know.
He will. I mean, maybe.
That was why I hit the pause there, because I was like, I guess we don't fully know yet, do we? But
we know that they're on their way home, not in a battle formation. Which, I mean, it would be outlandishly terrifyingly tragic if they get shot down on their way home, but I don't think that would be at the fault of Darrow at that point. Victor wouldn't see it that way, but I couldn't blame Darrow for that.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I also can't blame Darrow. I think that the part of this is that obviously it's not Darrow's fault that Severo came here. It is entirely Severo's fault.
I mean, you could make the argument that Darrow decided that Severo wouldn't listen to him, so he never fought back against it.
I mean, maybe. I think he wanted Severo to go.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
But there's the scene with Victra while Darrow's packing.
Yep.
Where she's begging him to let him stay. And
Correct.
he just, instead of saying, I'll do what I can, he says, he'd never listen to me in that sense. Like, he'd come either way.
Yeah.
But he never makes the attempt.
Yeah, I think that's definitely curious. Would he try to have made, especially given what we know?
I agree with
that he
him,
would have?
though. Like, even if he tried, I think Severo would have come.
Yep. I agree. I think so, for sure.
But he didn't try.
Correct.
So that question is technically always going to be up in the air until we see otherwise.
Yeah, of course. So Apollonius as well is let go here. Darrow's promise is partially honored as he lets the man free, but doesn't give up the hostages that he wanted, that Apollonius wanted.
It's more than I would have given the man, but I also probably wouldn't have tried to break him out of deep grave. Sorry.
Yeah. What kind of a psycho would do that?
One that thinks he knows everything.
Our psycho. That's the kind of psycho.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's a great little moment where they get to kind of recant, and there's sort of a genuine moment of, a little bit of honor, and Darrow holding up his end of the deal actually feels really good to us, to me at the very least. And while it doesn't necessarily feel good to him, it does leave them with a decent sense. However, you can tell that he obviously pissed off Apollonius, and that this might not actually be the end of this part of the conflict. So. As the final words of the book ring out, we really see what Darrow has become: a father, but not one with a son. He is Rage, he is House Mars, and he is the Reaper. If he is a father, I would say that he is a father of the Republic, first and foremost, and he will always choose to be that father. I really think that the central core thesis of this is him rejecting to be the father of his son, and instead choosing to be the father of the Republic.
So I agree with you to a point, but it may be, as the theme of this episode goes, a little bit nitpicky, in that I don't think he's the father of the Republic. I think he's the father of the resistance and of the uprising and of the rebellion. And that rebellion is still ongoing, even though the Republic exists. He is not in the leadership of the Republic. He is what ushered in the existence, or the potential for the existence of the Republic. But he is the father of the rebellion and of the fight against who used to be. And that fight against who used to be is still ongoing. And that is the rebellion. I don't think he's the father of the Republic. I think Mustang is the mother of the Republic. And Mustang and Dancer, for that matter. But I think there's a distinction there.
Sure. I don't... So he was, at the very least, a part of society leadership. So I don't feel like that's entirely accurate. He obviously is the father of the rebellion, and this book is also dealing with the consequences of rebellion. But I don't think that it's a stretch at all to say that he's a father of the Republic, because the entire Republic looks up to him.
I don't think it's the same thing, because he's not technically a part of the Republic. He ushered in the possibility for them to exist. But that doesn't mean that he is a part of it. Maybe the grandfather to the Republic.
That doesn't make any sense.
No?
Why would he be the grandfather and not the father? Especially
because
considering
he has no say in how they built themselves.
What? He
gave them the opportunity to grow. But he didn't also build them. No, but you don't, like... No, I get it. I think there's a distinction there. I think there's a separation. I don't think he has any care for how the Republic was built and how they operate, other than what they're doing. And I think his obsession still is fighting those who oppose the existence of anything other than the society, or anything other than what they're trying to build in the Republic. And like, yes, this is a very subtle difference, but I'm going to stand by it, because I don't think he's I don't think he's the father of the Republic, and I don't think anybody within the Republic, other than maybe Mustang, but I think Mustang would be on my side here in saying that he is not what created the Republic. He's what created the room for the Republic to be born. I don't know. Maybe it's too subtle. Maybe it's too nitpicky, but I think there's a difference there. I think there's a distinction.
I mean, I guess the other part of this is that obviously he's pointed to as a tyrant by Dancer early on in the book. So I guess I don't see. I mean, okay. Here's a final point that I will try to bring to this before I wrap up my side of this argument. So when I think about a rebellion, it births something, right? So the rebellion birthed the Republic. Okay. And it doesn't happen without
putting
Darrow.
It that way. Yeah. Yep. You're right. Putting it that way, that makes total sense. Yep.
I guess like that, and all that I'm also trying to say here is that doesn't mean that he's also not still obviously rebellion first. But what's interesting is that you saying that also points me back to sort of the simplicity of what, or like the reduction, I think, of that Dido made to Lysander about Darrow, about the Rising, about it being the Rising, not the Republic. Mm-hmm. Is that I think reduces his role a lot. You know, and my like mental example with history is a lot of people say like, you know, there are a ton of founding fathers of the United States, but like Benjamin Franklin's a great example where he literally didn't hold any real official position, but he's still considered a very important founding father, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, I think technically he was the ambassador to somewhere at some point, but...
Yeah. But either way.
Minister of Sweden. But yeah, and France. But not really... Oh, and Postmaster General. Okay, well, fine. Maybe not as good of an example as I thought, but, you know, there's some of those. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, what a book, man. That's it.
Yeah,
it's it.
What a fucking book.
We still have some stuff to talk about yet as we approach the 4-hour mark. But we've got your predictions.
We do. So basically, what I did is I wrote down the 4 main characters that we see point of views from, along with Atalantia and Dancer. And I just wrote what I thought was going to happen in kind of vague terms. Maybe if I think of more things to add, maybe I'll tack that on to the end of next week's episode with Hail Reaper, but I'm not sure. But that's where this is all coming from. So we've got Lyria. I think I mentioned it during the show. I think she'll get basically ruthlessly tortured by Victra until Electra and Severo return home, or until Lyria dies. Again, I don't think she'll be a point of view of the next book. Ephraim. I think he survived the plane crash with the children, but his painting and all the loot that he needlessly like snagged is all lost to the wind during the crash. He'll go on to be rescued and then imprisoned. The children are children, so they're basically made of rubber and they'll be fine in the crash. No problemo. Their competency in fighting is going to be what keeps them from perishing before they get rescued. Them and Ephraim alike. Lysander, the cat's kind of out of the bag as far as who he is goes, his identity. So that's going to bring him a little bit of trouble going forward, navigating around the core, but it's also going to make it a whole lot easier to like recruit soldiers and recruit battalions for his army. Darrow, or I actually just wrote the Reaper of Mars instead of Darrow, because there's nothing really left of Darrow at this point. His motivation is almost entirely war, and I don't think Mustang is going to go for like rooting for him or hoping for him to come home, or really even consider him a part of her or Pax's family anymore. Just basically based on what he's put them through. But he'll harness that rage of the situation and produce an even more violent stand against the Rim and whatever army Lysander puts together. So,
okay.
Atalantia, as far as I can understand, she's basically the Jackal, but she's a girl and she's stronger. And I did that. I did write that with a K. Strong. She's stronger. And I think Dancer successfully takes over the Senate and overthrows Virginia. I don't think he takes on the leadership role. The what's it fucking called?
Sovereign.
I don't think he'll be sovereign, but I think he is going to be kind of a pivotal role within the leadership. So,
sure.
Any
especially
other questions
the way like
that you
word
have?
vomits all over the place.
Yes, that's true. Any questions that you have of me that I could answer as far as predictions go? Otherwise, I'm done with what I've got.
No, I think those were really kind of the big ones. That's kind of what I was thinking is, hit the main characters and some other things that you think are going to happen. I guess maybe the only other thing is where do you think the book and different POVs are going to take place?
Oh, shit.
So the Reaper's going to Mercury. Like
I think we get Darrow, or maybe even just explicitly laid out as the Reaper. I think we get Lysander, and I think we get Virginia, and I think we get Atalantia. I don't think Lyria or Ephraim continue on as points of view in the book.
Oh, okay. Where are they variously, I guess?
I think Lyria, even if she doesn't die within the custody of House Barca, I think she is tortured to the point of unrecognizable, like a husk of a person.
Sure. A la the box.
Yeah. And I think Ephraim is at a point where either he dies, which I don't think he does. I think he survives the plane crash, but either he dies or he's at a point where he has nothing else to move towards. And he'll live out his life kind of in a boring way. Like there's nothing really important that can come out of him. So I think we continue on with Lysander and we continue on with Darrow because he's the main character of the entire series. And then we get Atalantia, who is the main adversary. And it'd be so fucking cool to see her perspective on all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And what did I say for the last one?
Virginia.
Because I don't think that she is tied to Darrow anymore. And I think there's a completely separate thread that can go on from there.
All right. Cool. Well, with that, it's been one heck of an episode. I don't know how the hell this is going to come out of the
long episode.
This is the longest we've ever recorded, PJ. Straight up.
It is. Straight up it is.
No question. I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to have to just chop shit out. So next week, PJ is dead, and we're not actually finishing the series.
Next week, PJ is dead, and we're not going to actually finish the series. Next week, PJ is entirely alive, and we are going to have a great conversation with Hail Reaper. And I think all three of them
Yes.
available? Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect.
Yep. So again, we mentioned this last week, but we've decided to discontinue the short pours for the time being. So the following week, after that, we will be jumping straight into Dark Age. So we'll let you know what that is. We aren't going to be doing a intro episode for it either. We're just going to kind of get to it and see how that functions, just to see if we're maybe setting ourselves up poorly. Or, we're just trying something different with the last book here. A little bit different. Exactly. So that's where we'll leave you for the week.
Shit. Why would you just jump into that like this?
Because that's how I always do it.
Yeah, you do. Thank you, of course, to our producers, as we say every week, Andrew and Tim. They help keep this going. They help keep the lights on. Check out all of the links in our show notes. That gives you links to our social media and our email and our schedule and our Patreon and a whole bunch of other shit. Previous episodes, our website, blah, 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 blah. So, fucking everything. Please check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a couple of new things here as well. We want to take a second today to thank our new patrons. So on the barback tier, we have Mather from Hail Reaper. Thank you so much for joining and hanging out with us. It's great to see you. Great to have you around.
In the bartender tier, we have Tim Pyerson and Xavier, which I'm so excited to have a great conversation with both of you going forward. Tim, I know I said your last name incorrectly, but I fucking hate you, so.
Aggressive. So thanks so much for the support. It really means the world to us. We are stoked, of course, and cannot wait. We will see you all next week with Hail Reaper.
I love you, Tim. Have a good night, everybody.